Morning, everybody. As said, my name is Joe Dupere. I'm CEO of Rexgenero. I'll talk to you a little bit about our company and our programs. We are a UK private company. In 2015, we established operations in Spain, down in Seville, ostensibly to bring innovative cell and gene therapies to the market, and with a focus on regenerative medicine. Our lead program is Rex-01, which is in a phase 3 program for the treatment of critical limb ischemia. And we also have our own manufacturing both in Seville and in Frankfurt in Germany. We believe that our product addresses a very significant market, and we believe that the efficacy and safety of the product makes it a very attractive potential therapy. So let me introduce you to Pepe. Pepe is a Spanish male. He's 66 years old. He has type 2 diabetes. He has critical limb ischemia. And that means that he has chronic non-healing ulcers. As a result of that, he has chronic pain. He's unable to walk. He's using a wheelchair. He has very poor sleep. And for him and for his family, it's a very challenging situation. So Pepe's prognosis, he has a life expectancy of around 5 years. Within any 1 year, he has a likelihood of being amputated of around 25%. His quality of life is about half what you would expect for a similar person of his same age. He also has a very high risk for gangrene, for infection, for sepsis, and for depression. So looking more broadly for patients with critical limb ischemia, this is looking at patients with category 5, so those are patients with ulcers. The treatment options for these patients, the standard of care is a surgical improvement, either through a bypass surgery or through an endovascular procedure, with the intention of improving the blood flow into the foot. But for a significant number of patients, these surgical procedures are not an option, and consequently they can only receive symptomatic treatment, wound management, pain management, and trying to prevent an amputation, which is often the treatment of last resort to alleviate the pain and to clear up some of the complications with ulcer. So on this pie chart on the left-hand side, you can see the outcomes for patients who are not eligible for surgery. So you can see the 3 gray segments are at 5 years, patients who either are amputated, who die, or both. So over 75% of patients, that is the outcome. The green is around 10% of patients who will spontaneously improve, but the rest will either deteriorate. So the red is patients who will deteriorate to gangrene, and a small number of patients will stay stable. For patients who are able to have a surgical procedure, the outcomes are a little better, but you can see that the 3 gray segments of amputation and death is still around 60% in this patient group. The slightly less patients will progress to gangrene, but again, only about 10% of patients will spontaneously improve. So this is a very bad outcome for patients in terms of their quality of life, but also in terms of the cost to the healthcare system to treat these patients in all the different support that they require. So Pepe was lucky. Pepe was treated with our treatment, Rex-01. On this slide, you can see an angiogram of the vessels in the lower leg. You can see that there are, I can't see doesn't work. But there are 3 main vessels. The vessel on the right is still open, but it's significantly depleted. The 2 main vessels you can see in the middle and the left have been completely occluded. But more significantly, there's been a very substantial loss of the collateral, the small vessels surrounding that. Those are the vessels that supply the muscle and the skin. And you can see a photograph on the bottom. This is an ulcer. This is a severe ulcer. It's surrounded by ischemic tissue. There's the purple and the yellow that you can see. So the outcome from this ulcer is very poor. Very likely that this patient would have been amputated as a result. So this is looking after treatment. So we give a single treatment with Rexo-1, and this is looking at 6 months. You can see that the 3 main vessels in the top right photograph are now fully open. The vessels themselves have strengthened, that they're broader. But the most significant aspect is that you have a substantial improvement in the collateral bed. And that manifests in terms of ulcer healing. You can see the ulcer is completely healed, but also if you look at the color of the skin around the ulcer, there is a much better blood supply. So the treatment, the outcome, following this ulcer healing is now very good. So, our therapy is an autologous therapy. That has a number of benefits, particularly in relation to safety. But the procedure involves a bone marrow extraction. That's a relatively straightforward procedure. It usually takes around 20 minutes. It's typically done under local anesthetic. We then take the bag of bone marrow, we then transport it to our manufacturing facility. We manufacture the product through selecting the cells within the bone marrow. That's a process that takes around 8 hours. And then we then ship it back to the hospital for infusion directly into the arteries in the lower leg, which then begins the process of revascularization. And as a result of that, you get a resolution of rest pain, you get healing of the ulcers, and that then prevents deterioration to an amputation. So in terms of the market, we believe that the addressable market for CLI is in excess of 5 million patients between Europe and the US. We're addressing that progressively, initially in patients with diabetes, first in Europe and then in the US. This is around 1 million patients. And then a second indication will be progressing to patients without diabetes. We also have data in that group from a previous phase 2 study, though that's a further nearly 2 million patients. But this is a complicated disease to treat, so we also have 2 other therapies which have slightly different characteristics, with the aim of being able to treat the full gamut of patients with CLI, which, as I said, right now have very poor treatment options. So to talk a little bit more specifically about Rexo-1, Rexo-1 is a combination it's a proprietary combination of cells. We patented the cell composition, the dose, and the administration procedure in 2016. And we believe that this combination significantly boosts the efficacy. You have a combination of cells, and that provides a significant whack to the vessels to enable them to fully regrow in what is a long-term progressive condition. It's also autologous, which means that it's highly safe. This is cells derived from the patient themselves. In terms of mechanism of action, it contains a number of different types of cells. So it has stem cells, which directly integrate into form new vessels, but also has a number of other support cells, which produce a range of growth factors and cytokines, which stimulate that whole process. And we believe that it's that combination that is necessary for boosting the efficacy. So in aggregate, the product induces new blood vessels, so both the bigger vessels, but also most critically the small microvessels. That then leads to an increase in blood flow, particularly into the foot and into the toes, where most of the ulcers are. That then gives a better tissue oxygenation, and then that can then lead to the reversal of the symptoms of CLI. So ulcers heal, you relieve the pain, the limb is salvaged, you prolong the patient's life, and most significantly, there's a very big boost in their quality of life. They can then walk and they can sleep much better. It's a very significant outcome for the patient. So this is some data from a previous phase 2. So we've conducted 3 previous clinical trials, a phase 1, 2, and 2 phase 2s. This is data separating the patients into 2 classifications. So category 4 on the 2 top panels are patients who just have rest pain, and on the bottom 2 panels, these are patients with ulcers, so they're category 5. If you look at the top left panel, this is looking at data at baseline and at 12 months. So basically, patients, there's no change in their outcome. They stay with the pain for the 12 months. But after a single infusion at baseline, you can see that on the top right, 80% of patients were significantly improved. So they no longer have rest pain, they no longer have CLI. In the category 5 patients, again, bottom left is the control group. You can see that there's a small proportion after 12 months who are improved, but the majority are either stable or deteriorate. The gray is patients who are amputated, the black is patients who have died. On the bottom right, you can see the outcome after treatment with Rex-01. You can see that over 70% of patients were significantly improved. That means that their ulcers were completely healed, and over 50% of them had no CLI at all. So we believe this is a very significant result in terms of other programs that have been developed. There's a long history of using cell therapies in CLI, but we believe the combination of cells in our therapy together with the administration procedure and the dose results in a significantly improved clinical efficacy. So in terms of moving the product forward, we started a phase 3 study last year. The objective to look at the efficacy and safety of the product in patients with CLI and diabetes in both category 4 and 5. It's a confirmatory placebo-controlled study using novel endpoints. And this is a discussion we had with various regulators in Europe and in the US to move away from the traditional endpoint. We use complete relief of rest pain in category 4 patients, complete ulcer healing in category 5 patients. And this means that these endpoints are much more sensitive. You can use a smaller patient population, and it's a much higher likelihood of success. We treated our first patient last year. We expect full enrollment by middle of next year, which would give us a potential marketing authorization in 2022. So in terms of where we are in the study, we have 12 sites recruiting in 6 countries. We expect to have a further 10 sites in 4 new countries by the end of the year. We're in active setup of 5 additional sites right now. We also have some encouraging efficacy. We had a couple of patients who were treated outside of protocol, which means that we know what treatment they had, so that they don't contribute to our trial, but they give a good indication that the product is working. So in one patient, they were treated in both legs, and there was a very substantial improvement after 12 months. In the other patient, they were treated in just the one leg, but again, there was a very substantial improvement. So the ulcers completely healed in both patients, which is very encouraging in terms of the efficacy of the product. So in terms of future milestones, as I said, we expect full enrollment by middle of next year. We will then have an interim analysis in 2021, and by the end of the year, we would get our top-line data, which will enable us to get a marketing authorization in Europe in 2022. The US is about a year behind, so in 2023. In parallel, we are developing our manufacturing. We've set up manufacturing in both Spain and in Germany, but we have an ongoing program of process optimization to enable us to have a scalable commercial manufacturing process. We will establish a facility in the US, but we will then have a fully commercial manufacturing process in time for launch. And we're also engaging in various market access programs in terms of to ensure we get reimbursement initially in the UK and Germany, but it will enable us to then expand that into the rest of Europe and then later into the US. So just in summary, we address a very large market, CLI. It's got very substantial unmet need, very poorly treated right now. We have a broad portfolio of late-stage innovative advanced therapies. We believe we have the best-in-class clinical results. And we have a clinical program for our lead product, Rex-01, which has a high probability of success and a potential launch in 2022. We have strong IP protection, both in terms of patents, but also in terms of the other know-how around the product. We have a scalable business model, which we can manufacture for a significant number of patients post-launch. And we have potential to deliver highly attractive financial returns in terms of the pricing potential, but also the cost that we have. It's a relatively inexpensive product to produce. So thank you.